we will be electing people who are going to be our voice. So that's another thing. And I don't know whether the Australian public knows this, but we don't have access, a lot of our communities rather, don't have access to clean water, which is a fundamental, basic human right. We don't have that in every area in Australia.
One for Mum, one for Dad, and one for the country.
And there has never been a more exciting time to be an Australian.
Budgets are about choices, Fran, and you show what you value through the choices you make.
This is coal. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared. The Treasurer knows.
I want an economy that works for people, not the other way around.
We'll just end up being a third-rate economy, a banana republic.
Just follow the money.
G'day, and welcome to Follow the Money, the Australia Institute's podcast that explains big economic issues in plain English. I'm Ebony Bennett, Deputy Director at the Australia Institute, and after a long time, the referendum is finally upon us. And the majority of Australians will vote at the polls this Saturday, the 14th of October, on whether or not to enshrine an Indigenous voice to Parliament in our Constitution.
In the 1967 referendum, over 90% of Australians voted yes.
The Yes campaign still believes referendum success is possible.
It's time to talk about the morality of the choice facing us as Australians. One choice will bring us pride and hope.
Is it true 80% of First Nations people want the voice?
Yes, yes and yes.
Because we already live in no. We're already here in no. No is now.
Recognise our history didn't begin in 1788. It goes back 65,000 years. And I think most people would recognise that should be a source of pride and we should recognise.
We grew up seeing what we can achieve as communities when we're given the opportunity to come up with localised solutions and have the autonomy over decision making for our people.
There are 110 advisory bodies who are registered and have access to the federal government, including, for example, the Mining Advisory Board. Are they dividing the country into miners and non-miners? There are so many special interest groups that have access to the government to provide advice on policy. Why would it be a problem for First Nations people to have the same rights?
Kiwis are mentioned more times in the Australian Constitution, which completely throws off the vibe of the thing.
Having it enshrined in the Constitution will mean that it can't get abolished, like ATSIC or, before it.
It cannot override government. It's not a third chamber of government. It doesn't have veto power. It doesn't create special rights.
Talking about a system of local and regional bodies that feed into the national body. So the idea that we're not going to hear from the voices of local people or people in the regions just isn't right.
Importantly, the government doesn't have to follow that advice. All they have to do is listen to it.
This is an opportunity for us to be inclusive and build a stronger and better nation. Because they thought the Prime Minister was going to give the detail of what it is they're being asked to vote on. But as it turns out, the detail is not coming.
And overcome one of the No campaign's loudest messages. If you don't know, vote no.
If you don't know, find out. We're not ready for that yet. We want to have a treaty and we want truth-telling.
Okay, but I saw a video of an Indigenous person saying that it doesn't go far enough, and I'd personally like it to go far enough.
Me too. I'd like to go far enough for Indigenous people, for them.
Okay, so you would vote no to this progress so that we can reconvene at an undisclosed point in the future and then go far enough.
The Uluru Statement from the Heart was written by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and it presents an invitation to the rest of us. Come with us, walk with us.
Now, this is history in the making, and that's why I want to be.
It's all about love. Vote for the First Nations people so that we can be included in the Constitution.
So I'll be voting yes.
Most liberal democracies around the world have some kind of arrangement, agreement or settlement with their First Nations peoples. But in Australia, we don't have anything like this. The Uluru Statement from the Heart is really the origin of the voice to Parliament, and it began with the Uluru Dialogues. But now it's time for Australians to have their say on the voice to Parliament in this referendum. And many Australians are still unsure about what the referendum is even about. And the polls show that a huge number of Australians still have not made up their mind about whether to vote yes or no. What would a voice to Parliament look like, and how would it help Indigenous people? These are some of the questions that Australians still have. And so to help make those issues more clear, the Australia Institute's Kate McBride recently sat down with Pat Anderson AO, an Alyawarre woman and one of the architects of the Uluru Statement from the Heart and co-chair of the Uluru Dialogues.
Hi, I'm Kate from the Australia Institute, and I'm here today to have a chat with Aunty Pat about The Voice. Sure. To start with, let's go back to the very start. Where did the Voice proposal come from?
It came from us. It's really important for the viewers to understand this isn't a government initiative. It came from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, first peoples of this vast, beautiful land that we all share. This has been a long process. The consultations, regional dialogues we had around the country, they culminated in the issuing of the Uluru Statement from the Heart.
So Aunty Pat, you were part of the 12 dialogues, and where have we gone from there?
All of those 12 dialogues elected delegates to represent them after a 3-day meeting at the convention, the Constitutional Convention. So all of that process ended up with issuing of the Uluru Statement from the Heart as a gift, an invitation to the Australian people to walk with us for a better future for the country. So but it's a even longer process. This latest process is 12 years, but we started doing this a long time ago. Generations of us have been pretty much asking for the same thing. None of the ideas were new. In fact, William Cooper in the 1920s and 30s first talked about something that looks like a voice to the Parliament of the day. So generation after generation, we've been jumping up and down and saying, we're here, this is our place, acknowledge and respect us. And that's what is on the table at the moment, a very simple ask to say yes at the referendum so that we can change the Constitution, so we can have a protected voice, so we can talk to the Parliament of the day as well as the Executive on issues that affect us.
So before a referendum was even on the table, this was an invitation to the Australian people rather than politicians or any parliament across Australia. Why the Australian people?
Despite our bloody history, people at the dialogue recognise, they said it very clearly, that the Australian public, they helped us in 1967 and will ask and will help them again, because there was this strong belief that Australians were fundamentally good people, and they believed in their common decency. So it was a very conscious decision to gift the Uluru Statement, a gift of hope and love, to the Australian people, asking them again to help us. We did that because the people are also very aware that the power of a voice enshrined in the Constitution is for the people to decide. It's for you who decide what sort of a country we're going to be earlier, not so much the politicians. They are elected by all of us. So the real power of what a nation looks like and who it is in the world rests with the people. Now, our mob knew that very clearly and wanted to engage not so much with politicians, but with the Australian public, because that belief in the common decency of you all.
And so the referendum is up to the Australian people, but I suppose parliamentarians will have an important role to play. If the referendum does get up, they are going to have an important role to play in designing the voice as well with First Nations people, because there's a lot of questions around at the moment at exactly, what will the voice look like? What size will it take? How will it work? But really, that hasn't been decided yet, because as you said, it's a concept. It's not the final design, which has to go through our parliament again, doesn't it?
This country has never taken a model to referenda. It's always been a principle. I mean, even the setting up the Federation itself and the High Court and what have you. They just put that idea to the people, the voters, at the time was mainly rich non-Indigenous men. No women were included. Of course, we definitely weren't included, but nor were women. So it was a principle, and that's what we've done all along. It's just this clamour for detail. We've never gone to referenda on a model. We have gone on an idea, a concept, a set of principles. This is a really good idea. We think it's a good idea. What do you guys reckon? And the nation says yes or no. It's the same. This is exactly the same.
So, Auntie Pat, what will the voice look like? There's a lot of questions around at the moment, but Parliament will play an important role in actually designing exactly what the final voice looks like, won't they?
Parliament, in concert with us, because we've just gone to a successful referendum and got yes, and it says that we should be involved and consulted and engaged in all the decisions and policies that affect us. So we will definitely be at the table after a successful referendum. So we will be part of that design process. But the ultimate authority is still the Parliament. We won't be able to usurp their decisions. However, we will have to be listened to because our voice is now enshrined in the Constitution. A lot of us have sat on all kinds of committees trying to persuade, engage, educate, seduce whoever we're talking to, mostly politicians, to our point of view. But now they are duty bound by their own law to properly hear us.
Because fundamentally, it just comes down to giving First Nations people the right to give advice on laws that affect them, isn't it? You guys will be able to say, this is what Parliament should do. It doesn't necessarily mean they will always do that. Unfortunately, that's the reality of our Parliament. But I think that's an important thing. And, mentioning that relationship, which that's what this will look like.
The voice will have the protection of the Constitution given to it by the Australian people, by you. We mandated. What we say will be mandated by the Australian public, the Australian people. And that's how it should be. That's our democracy. That's our system. That's how it works. So there will be a big difference in terms of how we are understood and how we are listened to. Because, it's a fundamental truism that when you engage the people that you're making laws and decisions about, you get better governance, you get better decision making, and you get, in our case, more targeted resources down to the areas where they are really needed. And this country, there's so much disadvantage. We have so much money in this country. We have so much disadvantage and it's not getting down to us. It's as simple as that. So we have to get down to the areas of real need. And we understand our communities, we understand our families. So we will have better governance, I think, and better targeted allocation of the resources. The voice also won't be top down. It will be people living, people will be elected, selected, whatever is decided, by their own communities. The government's won't go around like it does now. We'll have you and you, not you, definitely not you, and so on and so forth. That's finished. So people will be speaking for their own areas and their own communities, yet to be defined what those areas might look like. But nevertheless, it will be people. We will be electing people who are going to be our voice. So that's another thing. And I don't know whether the Australian public knows this, but we don't have access, a lot of our communities rather, don't have access to clean water, which is a fundamental, basic human right. We don't have that in every area in Australia.
It's actually a vast amount of area that doesn't. And even in my community of Menindee in the far west of New South Wales, it is one of our biggest issues. And I've actually seen the benefit to the community by having both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal regional voices heard in the decision making when it comes to water policy and these things not just coming from Canberra. And I think that's why for me, I'll be voting yes, because I've seen what voices from the regions and voices from these areas, how they have better outcomes from people on the ground.
The important thing here, because I'm from the Northern Territory and we have so many issues and that just don't get dealt with. And we see the money that, is allocated. In fact, the Productivity Commission has already said that this $30 billion comes to us every year. That's a lot of money. Only about 20%, 27% rather, actually gets to us and to our needs. So the voice might say, well, where's the rest of the money? Where has it gone? Why do we have this shocking housing shortages across the country? Where's that money gone? Nobody asks that, so the voice would be asking, once again, for better governance and better decision making.
And I think another thing that sort of comes down to as well is the fact that what we're doing right now isn't working. is it? We are not saying that closing of the gap, if you want to refer to that, or, you know, this life expectancy gap closing, or those health outcomes changing, or the opportunities for First Nations people. What we've been trying to do isn't working, and it's about time that we try something new.
There has to be change. Look, I think even people who probably don't even support the voice, I think everybody has agreed that there has to be change. The status quo hasn't worked, despite the best efforts of all kinds of people over generations. It hasn't worked. The missing ingredient is we haven't been sitting at the table with you. People will say we have all these committees. Well, we do, but I've sat on them too, like a lot of us out there. But there's no reason why they need to, and often they don't. So that's very nice. You get a pat on the head, metaphorically, and you go back to home and that's it. But nothing changes. Nothing really fundamentally changes. We have to rely on, a sympathetic minister and we have met them. That's when we get some change, but it's really incremental. And now our societies are getting more and more complicated across the world, and it's time for change. I think everybody has agreed that there has to be a change, and what is on the table is a perfectly reasonable guide to how we need to move forward, and it will change everything.
So, Auntie Pat, my final question is, what would be your message to Australia?
There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation around at the moment, and we're not going to be able to get to cover it. So my message to you is, when you go into the polling booth on that voting day, I think it was announced today, the 14th of October, when you're in the polling booth, there'll be just you and your conscience, and you have to decide which way you're going to vote. There's only one way, yes or no. Whatever you vote, it's entirely up to you, of course, but I ask that you take responsibility where you put that, how you vote.
Thank you. Well, Auntie Pat, you've been an absolute champion right from the beginning of this, and I think it'll be a really tough couple months moving forward, but the work that you've put into this is amazing, and it's an honour to sit beside you.
It's time, Australia, let's do it. Let's get this over and done with, and a successful referendum.
It's a simple proposition to join the new and old, a chance to make our country larger in its soul. It's an invitation offered to set our course anew. If not now, then when? If not us, then who? How long can we keep walking with this stone in our shoe? If not now, then when? If not
This episode was recorded on Friday the 8th of September 2023, and things may have changed since recording. The Australia Institute supports the Voice to Parliament. We believe the Voice will deliver on the call made in the Uluru Statement from the Heart for voice, treaty and truth, and it will enrich our democracy and help make Australia a more just nation. You can view our full statement on why the Australia Institute supports the Voice to Parliament on our website at australiainstitute.org.au, along with all our latest research and content. And you can find us on Twitter at the Oz Institute with an AUS. My Twitter handle is ebony_Bennett with a _N_T. Our producer Jennifer Macy is at Jennifer Macy, with additional editing from Emily Perkins. Our theme music is by Jonathan McFeet from Pulse and Thrum, with additional music from Blue Dot Sessions. Thanks for listening. This episode is authorised by Ebony Bennett on behalf of the Australia Institute, Canberra.